Good morning, or good afternoon, actually. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Deanne Jones. I'm the project director for Strong Readers here in the state of Oklahoma, and we are starting our monthly meeting for Strong Readers. So let me get my screen shared and we will just jump right into the agenda. Okay. Still waiting for a few more people, looks like, to come in out of the waiting room, and then we will be ready. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Like I said, I'm Deanne Jones, and I deal with Strong Readers here in the state of Oklahoma. And what we have going on right now is reports. So our annual district reading plans just closed on August 30th. We still have a few schools who have not yet got those submitted to us. And if you are one of those schools, we really need those as soon as possible. Most everyone else that has them in, I have already started reviewing those and approving them or sending back emails asking for corrections. So if you do not hear from us, you can log in and just look to see if yours has received State Department approval. Otherwise, if you do need corrections, so usually if yours is approved, you will not get an email from us. I guess no news is good news. But if yours does need corrections, then I will be sending you an email telling you what sections need corrections. And then we'll be asking you to log in and make those corrections and then have it resubmitted and recertified for us to review again. The other thing that is open right now is the Strong Readers Survey, and that is the BOI report. It is in single sign-on. It's the Strong Readers Survey, and when you go to the top, you click the BOI tab. We do have a report. I linked the tutorial right here. One thing about that, let me go ahead and put the bit.ly for the agenda into the chat so that anyone who is wanting to follow along with us can have that in the chat. Put that on here. There you go. Now that's in the chat for you. So I did link the tutorial. So if you haven't completed your beginning of the year report, you can watch the tutorial and it'll guide you through step by step. It is currently open and it is due on October 1st. This is the one where we get all of your numbers of the number of students that you have tested K through 3rd grade and the number of students who were found at risk for reading difficulties. This is what your funding is based on. So we have to have all of these reports submitted and approved before we can send out any Strong Readers funds to districts. We also have to have all of the reading plans approved before we can send out any Strong Readers funds. So these two reports, it is very important that you get them completed and sent in to us, as well as if we send you any requests for corrections to be made to your reading plan, that you do those as soon as possible so that we can make sure that our districts are getting their Strong Readers funds in a timely fashion so that they can put that money to use for helping our readers in Oklahoma. If you have any content questions on your plan or the survey, you can email questions to literacy@sde.ok.gov. But if you're having technical issues, then you can submit a service ticket at servicedesk@omes.ok.gov. Sometimes there's things, if it's just, it may be something that I can help you with if you send, but if it is really an actual technical issue, then OMES has to take care of those. I did also link the Strong Readers timeline right here that you can click on that gives you the due dates for all of the plans that we have throughout the school year, so that you'll just make sure that you're aware of all of our timelines and due dates so that you can get those done. Before I move on, I want to stop and see if we have any questions. So on the call with me is Kylie Alleman, and she has she's one of our Literacy Heroes team, and she is our dyslexia coordinator. So Kylie, do we have any questions about the annual district reading plan or the BOI report before I go on?
I'm not seeing anything yet. It's mostly just introductions from where everybody's located.
Okay, perfect. So another thing that is also going on right now is the Strong Readers website requirement. This was actually due September 1st. So districts are required to post this data on their school websites, and this is the data that's from the previous school year. So this would be your data from the 24-25 school year. We sent out those forms. I also have it linked here. This is our OSDE approved format. And then this is our guidance document that goes through step by step answering all those questions. We also talked about this at last month's meeting. And if you do not have this posted by if you did not get this posted by September 1st, please get it posted as soon as you can. You will be asked to provide the link to where you have this posted on that Strong Reader Survey BOI report. So when you're turning that in, you're going to have to post the link. If you have any questions on that, you can also email the literacy inbox or my inbox, and we can get you some help with getting all of that stuff entered and so that you can fulfill that requirement. The next thing is something that is a project that I've been working on for quite a while, and I'm very excited to say that it is ready to roll out. This is a Strong Readers Coordinators course that is developed on the OSDE Connect. So this course is designed for Strong Readers coordinators or any other staff that's responsible fulfilling the requirements of the Strong Readers Act at your school. There's modules on this, and the modules include topics like assessments, interventions, documentation, reporting, and funding. And this link is the course invitation. So if you click on this link, it will take you to where I'll just show you, take you straight to it where you can click enroll. If you already have an OSDE Connect course login, if you don't, you can, I think you click that and it will take you to a place where you can create your own login. All of our OSDE Connect courses are free of charge, and you will earn a certificate for completion. So when you complete this course, we're estimating it takes around 3 hours to complete this course, and you will receive a certificate that you can print off and give to your district to receive some professional development hours worth 3 hours of PD. So this is a great course if you're new to doing Strong Readers at your school, or even if you've been doing it a while. We all know that so much changed last year with it going from RSA to Strong Readers that a lot of it is still new. And even if it's not, you might use the refresher on it, because these things there's a lot of nuances within this and all of what's required with in the Strong Readers Act. So I am very excited that this course is completely ready and that we can offer it to all of our districts. And so if you would like to take this, go ahead and get enrolled. If you would like to share this link with your administrators or other teachers at your school, I would for sure say anyone who's responsible for doing the reporting. Some schools that is administrators that do the reporting, but other schools it can be reading specialists. I did these reports as a reading specialist at my district that I was in. Sometimes it is just a grade level teacher who's doing these, whatever that looks like at your school. Anyone who's responsible for this reporting, this would be a great course for it to go over that. If you're a teacher who works in grades K through 3 and you are responsible for part of the interventions, so this still would be a good thing for you. And it's even the funding and the reporting would just be good for your background knowledge to kind of understand everything that's included and all that Strong Readers Act entails. So make sure you let anyone who might be interested and this might be applicable for know, and you can share this link out with this course invitation. Actually, Kylie, could you go ahead and copy that course invitation and put that in the chat too? And that way we can just have that there for everyone. Another thing, we kind of talked about a little bit last year at the end of the year, is Strong Reader site visits. Last year during the school year, towards kind of second semester of last school year, I started doing some site visits. And I kind of talked about that on one of our meetings. And I did a few throughout the second semester of last year. Haven't done any yet this year with busy back to school time. I know schools are busy. I'm doing all these reporting right now, but I am going to start these back this fall. And so the purpose of a sight reader's visit is just observing a strong reader's plan in action. I see every site's strong reader's plan that lists what you're doing in your school, what interventions you're using, what who's providing those interventions, how often they're happening, what materials you're using for core, tier 1 and tier 2 and 3 interventions as well. And so this would just be the chance for me to come in and see that in action. I also hear from a lot of districts around the state, so it's really good for me to see what's being used in districts and what's working well for districts. Maybe what districts are using certain things and what struggles they're having, so that I can share that with other districts that are using the same materials or the same programs. And also just for people at the state, when we are looking at things and trying to make decisions about how things are going to be implemented, it's good for us to keep, I always want to remember what it's like to be a teacher in a classroom. I'm only like a year and a half out of a classroom, but I never want to forget what that feels like. And I don't want to be too far removed from that, so that when I'm looking at how things should look in practice, I want to keep that in the forefront of my mind of how is this going to work for students across the state? How's it going to work for educators across the state? So that's one of the other purposes of this, is just, I need to be in classrooms. I need to see how these things look and how they're working and what we can do to better support and make it work better for our educators. Things that I would hope to see on a visit would be the assessments, the data, how you're using the data from your assessments, your curriculum, the intervention that's being used to improve literacy. What things would be expected in a single visit would be a conversation, approximately around 30 minutes. Usually I have just gone in and spoke with administrator, maybe a reading specialist or grade level teacher, whoever the administrator decides they would like to be on the conversation, just to kind of give me an overall of how things are going at your district, what things you could use some support on, what things are going good, and basically anyone who's involved in making some decisions for how literacy practices work at your school. And then after that 30-ish minute conversation, we'd like to observe a few small groups, at least a couple different small groups, maybe around 15 minutes each group. That's kind of open to you, what you would like me to see. I've seen small groups just in the classroom where it's just, the whole class is there and the teacher's got a small group back at a table. I've observed some of those. I've observed reading specialists or interventionists pulling small groups out, special ed teachers doing small groups. Whatever this looks like at your school, just want to see a sample of how small groups are working at your school. The one thing that has changed from last year is that now I have a form where you can volunteer. You can sign up on this form and volunteer to be a host site for one of my site visits. So this is a link right here. Kylie, if you would also post or copy that site visit volunteer form and put that in the chat. If you would like to volunteer, speak to your administrator, of course, and if you would like to volunteer your site for a site visit, this is just there's maybe 5-6 questions on there about what site you're at, who would I be able to visit with when I'm there, what are you using, and maybe like what months would be best for you for me to come in and visit your school. So if you would like to volunteer for a site visit, please fill out that form so that I can possibly get with you and schedule a site visit. Is there any questions coming through, Kylie, that we need to address?
We have a couple.
Okay.
So 2 have to do with a slip. So if we have students on an IEP, do they also receive a slip?
Okay, there's 2 parts to that answer. First of all, if it's a K through 3rd grade student, yes, even if they're on an IEP, they are required to have a slip. That changes when we go out of 3rd grade and we go into those 4th and 5th grade students who are receiving ongoing intervention. after the third grade. So our rule right now is third graders who were on a slip and did not meet the 40th percentile rank before, but were passed on to fourth grade, and they are still scoring below the 40th percentile rank at the beginning of fourth grade. Those students must remain on a slip and receive interventions until at which time they are scoring above the 4th percentile. The difference with fourth and fifth grade is post third grade, if they are on an IEP, you are required to give those interventions and monitor them, but you can document their interventions on their IEP. So for K through 3, if they're on an IEP, yes, they still have to have a slip. Beyond third grade, if they're on an IEP, you can document their interventions on their IEP and you do not have to have them on a slip.
So related to that, are there any instances where a fourth grader this year would have a need for a slip? So besides the IEP, would there be any other fourth graders that would need a slip?
Yes, if a student was on a slip last year in third grade and they did not meet the 40th percentile, but you sent them on to fourth grade, and right now, BOI, they're still below the 40th percentile, you would need to put them on a slip. And then the same would go if they're still not scoring next year in fifth grade, you would still put them on one.
And then one of the questions had to do with, can we use STAR as a progress monitor screener? Is that something we would talk about here, or is that something that would be an individual conversation?
So that's okay. So STAR is one of our approved screeners. So you can use STAR. And then when we talk about progress monitoring, we do not have an approved list of progress monitoring assessments. That is district choice. So when you're filling out your reading plan, it does say, are you progress monitoring with your screening assessment? And that is allowed. So if you're using STAR, some people who use STAR use maybe just the CBMs for progress monitoring, and that's okay. But you don't have to use one of our approved screeners for progress monitoring. You can use any assessment that you think fits the needs of your students and educators. So a lot of schools, what we see do, and is an effective practice, is they use a progress monitoring tool that's available through whatever intervention materials they have. So for example, if they're using 95% group phonics library, when you're working on vowel digraphs all this whole week, there's a little progress monitoring few question quiz that you give the student to see if they've mastered the skill you're working on. And then, you know whether you need to continue with that skill next week, or if you need to go on to a next one, go to the next skill next week, or if you need to review that one. That's progress monitoring. If you're progress monitoring what you're working on, that's what we need. So while we don't have an approved list, our guidance would just be, we would like your progress monitoring to closely mimic what skills you're working on with that student. Do we have?
And I think that's everything that we have. Anything else, if we didn't cover it here, could be emailed directly to literacy@sde.ok.gov.
Okay. The next thing is some training opportunities that will be coming up soon. So looking ahead to the changes that are going to be happening for assessments across the state, we are working on planning some training opportunities and some training sessions that will be both virtual and in person in several different areas of the state. I don't have a lot of information to give out on these yet until we have some more concrete information about some of the assessment changes, but just be watching out for dates that will be in probably late October, early November, and more information will be coming out soon about all of the changes with the end of the year assessments across the state and what those changes are going to look like. And so once those decisions are confirmed and we have posted all that information, we will be posting some training dates. So just be watching out for training dates for those things. And next up, we are having a little mini PD, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that Kylie can share hers. Stop sharing. Kylie is going to do a little mini PD lesson for us on progress monitoring.
1 second. Okay. I am Kylie Alleman, and I represent the Heroes Literacy Team. HEROES stands for Help Elevate Reading Outcomes for Every Student. The thing that we're talking about today specifically is progress monitoring and the alignment that we need between tiers, timing, and task. So when we think about progress monitoring, we have two different kinds. We look at the beginning of year, middle of year, and end of year to look at the educational health of the entire system and to monitor if we need to make adjustments for that big picture view. But then when we find individuals who need additional support, we would put them into tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, aligned with our OK MTSS framework. But there's a timing that has to do with progress monitoring within that intervention. And sometimes when we talk about progress monitoring across our systems, we get confused as to whether we're talking about those universal measures or whether we're talking about the progress monitoring that comes along with intervention cycles. And so we know that timing wise, when we have tier 1 plus or tier 2 students, we're going to be doing that monthly monitoring, making sure that the intervention is on track. And then we're also going to do increased progress monitoring for tier 3. And those students are always also going to receive that big picture progress monitoring for beginning, middle, and end of year. So once we have tier and timing aligned, we have to really look at our task alignment. We use our diagnostic to identify the lowest skill deficit, but what we find is often it's not that schools don't have a scope and sequence to find that lowest skill deficit. They actually have 5 scopes and sequences floating around. So being intentional about attending to 1 scope and sequence across your district, aligning skill interventions that are skill specific back to that identified lowest skill deficit. And when we progress monitor, truly aligning that progress monitor to the skill when we're talking about progress monitoring for our intervention cycles. An example could be identifying phonological awareness deficits, responding with manipulation of phonemes, using hands-on, but then working towards that abstract playing just with sound. And then progress monitoring might be just 1 section of a screener that is directly aligned to the skill. So if we're practicing removing initial sound, the deletion of initial sound is what we would progress monitor. We would not have to give an entire battery of tests to see if that skill had been attained. What we see sometimes in the field is that the pressure to close gaps leads to an identification of phonemic awareness deficit and a teacher feeling pressure to grow the student, so they lean in more towards a phonics response and then might even give a fluency measure. And so it's really making sure that if we have a phonics deficit, we have a phonics response and a phonics progress monitoring that's truly aligned to that skill. And supporting educators in that alignment by having lots of conversation around our data and helping teachers talk about this alignment and what they're choosing when they're responding. If this is something you would like more assistance in, the HEROES can come out into your systems. We work with building sustainable systems, matching evidence-based literacy instruction and resources to student needs, and providing professional learning. You can take a picture or grab a screen capture of this, or just scan these QR codes to request a HERO or to subscribe to our HEROES newsletter.
Okay. I did see a few other questions come through. Thank you, Kylie, for that. And I did see a couple other questions come through I'm going to address. And then if you guys have any questions for Kylie, go ahead and put those in the chat. We can talk about those in just a second too. But I saw a few things that I wanted to address. Several of them were about Amira. And we did update the guidance for Amira. I put the link to it in the chat because there was a couple mistakes in the Amira guidance that was posted on the OSDE website. There was a few numbers that were wrong. And so we have put in the updated corrected guidance, and I've put that link in the chat. And then another couple questions around Amira. One is about nonverbal students. We've had a lot of questions come through about how to give the assessment for your nonverbal students. And so some of our guidance from Amira is that there is a paper pencil test. And then we also had some people say that that also is not working well for their students. And so our response to that is Amira is working on a new digital version of the assessment where you do not have to respond orally. And that is, they're hoping that is going to be pushed out next month. So hopefully that will be soon, and we will have that released, and that hopefully will help with fill in the gaps where some of our schools were having issues with the nonverbal students and the Amira assessment. So we can look forward to that coming out hopefully in the next month or so, and that will be a resolution for some of our issues. One other thing that I saw asked about is the slip being generated in EdPlan. Unfortunately, that is still a work in progress, and that is not ready to be rolled out for this beginning of the year time and getting your slips developed for this school year, unfortunately. So this school year, you will still have to go ahead and do all of your slips either on the, you're gonna have to do them on paper and have them done. We will not be able to get that done in EdPlan, where that it was going to follow students from district to district. That is still in the works. It's just not ready to be used currently. So hopefully we're hoping that it will be ready by mid-year when you're adding any additional students onto a slip, but it is not currently ready. Okay, let's see. Do we have any questions for you, Kylie?
There was a question about, do we have to include tier 1 plus? Or can we just use tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3?
Do we think that is include them for reporting or include them on the?
Maybe just because I mentioned that
Oh.
the tier 1 plus range in progress monitoring.
So what happens with the tier 1? So tier 1 plus is really those students. If you are looking at, we do count tier 1 plus students count on strong readers when you're counting your students who are counted at risk of reading difficulties. So you are counting them in your numbers, you're receiving funding for those students. So you are required to provide interventions for them. However, they are still not at the percentile rank that would put them at tier 2. But under strong readers, you're required to provide interventions for them. That's where that tier 1 plus comes from. So we do count those. You do have to put them on a slip. You do have to provide interventions for them. As far as writing the numbers on the slip, I see where people are putting that there's the ARM score or the percentile rank. We don't have a real requirement which one you want to put, but we do say, we go off the percentile rank for us. So we're looking at that 40th. But if you want to put whichever one you think communicates better to your parents, I don't have a problem with you using either one of them, but just know that when you're reporting back to us, we do use the percentile rank. That way we have something consistent that we can use across all of our screeners. And you can even write in both if you want. And so that's what we've done previously in the past, even with scale scores and things on STAR, I would just usually write in both, and that's acceptable to do that. So I see some questions about, there's a question about 4th graders and their slip having nothing to do with state test, and that is correct. So since we no longer have RSA criteria on the state test, we are not looking at any of this. We did not look at the state test to determine if they still needed a slip in fourth grade, because previously it was if they met the RSA criteria, which was only on certain standards. I think it was only on standard 2 and 4. And this year we didn't have that criteria. So when you received their state test score for those third graders, you were only receiving their composite score for their whole state test. You weren't receiving that extra little flag for if they met or did not meet RSA criteria. So SLIP now has nothing to do with state test. It is only if they were on a SLIP in third grade and still did not meet 40th percentile, but they're in fourth and still not getting it, then they get a SLIP in fourth as well. So that is correct. Lauren's question, that is correct. It has nothing to do with state test now. We have posted several times the Amira link and the agenda. Oh, I do have another thing about guidance. So on our, we had an issue on our state website. I don't think it's corrected yet, but we've submitted it to be corrected. On map fluency and map growth. What happened was we had previously last week, we had put in the new map fluency guidance. And then when I submitted for them to update the map growth, I got the map growth stuff from the vendor and sent it in. It got posted on the wrong one. They posted it on the map fluency, which effectively took away our updated map fluency, and they put map growth in that spot, and the map growth section is still blank. We do have that submitted for that to be fixed. If you are needing it super quick and don't have time to wait for it on the website, you can email me at the literacy at literacy@sde.ok.gov, or you can email me deanne.jones, and I can just email those to you so that you don't have to wait for it to be posted on our website. I've done that for several schools and I don't mind doing that. I have both of those documents and I can send whether you need the map growth or the map. Well, the map growth is on there. It's just under map fluency. So you can find that one, but the map fluency one you actually can't access right now. So I can email that to you. And if you need that, just let me know. Anything else?
Cut scores in STAR for the 40th percentile.
So we no longer have a chart, you know, the chart that has been on the STAR guidance for years where it had the scale score. We don't have that chart anymore. We've taken that out of our guidance. We want you solely to look at the percentile rank because they renorm so often that those were no longer being accurate. So like you might look at it, but then you tested a week later or a week earlier than where they pulled those numbers and then they weren't matching up with percentile rank. So for STAR specifically, we say just look at the percentile rank. It's okay if you want to use the scale score for your own use or for even talking to other educators or parents. But when you are looking at SLIP eligibility and putting them in tiers, we want you to look at the percentile rank only. And so that's why that chart is no longer available. Another question about state test, and that is correct. We are not looking at state tests at all. We are only looking at the screener for the SLIP now. Do we see anything else? Oh, here's another question still about fourth grade. Fourth grade causes lots of questions to come up. And so the question that is asked is, regardless of how a student performed on the screener at the beginning of fourth or fifth grade, if they were not on a SLIP in third grade, do we not have to put them on one? And that is correct, because there is not a legislative ask for fourth and fifth graders to be screened and placed on SLIPs. The only thing that's in legislation for fourth and fifth grade is if they were already on a SLIP, that you're required to give them ongoing interventions in fourth and fifth. So that means if a student was on level in third grade, they were not on a SLIP, and then they go to fourth grade or even the next year in fifth grade and they score below the 40th percentile, you are not required to put them on a SLIP.
I have one more clarifying question. If we have a student on an IEP that has an exhibition, do they still need a SLIP?
If they have an exemption, then they are exempted from all of the strong readers requirements. So they would not have to take the screener. They would not be on a slip. That is what we are exempting them from. Okay.
So I've had this one twice. Can writing and grammar be included in the 90-minute block?
Yes. Yes, it can. All aspects of literacy can be included in the 90-minute block. I see someone in comments say that they contacted Renaissance and they gave them the chart. So if that is the case, in which we actually don't recommend you're using that, but if you are using that, just be aware that depending on when you're giving the test, it may or may not align. So if you're looking at that chart and you're seeing a discrepancy, like say it's saying someone who has a 977 is at the 41st percentile, but then when you're looking at the student's data in the reports, it's showing them at a different percentile rank. We want you to look at the percentile rank that the computer is coming up with for you. We don't want you to look at that chart, because in the computer where it is looking at your results, it knows what month you took it in, what date you took it in, and what is required right then. And the paper chart doesn't necessarily always align with that. So if you're having discrepancy from your paper chart that you've printed and you're looking at, and you're saying, it's saying this paper chart saying the student should be on level, but in the computer, it's saying that they're at the 38th percentile, we want you to count them at the 38th percentile and put them on a slip. So just know that if you're using that paper chart, it may not align, and we want you to look at the percentile rank and go with what the percentile rank says.
We have one that says if a student came off of a slip in 3rd grade, but in 4th grade, they are now below the 40th percentile, do we put them on a slip in the 4th grade?
If they were off of the slip at the end of 3rd grade, you are not required to put them on one in 4th and 5th grade. Now, that being said, we still want you to help the students if they need help. And there's nothing that says that you can't document those interventions on a slip and use that to communicate with parents. So we don't get those numbers from you for 4th and 5th grade. So it is not required. So my answer to the required question is no, it would not be required. But there's nothing that says you can't use that to document how you're helping the child. So you can, but it would not be required.
And then there's one that's clarifying a tiers question. It says, to clarify my question, can we continue using tiers 1, 2, 3 for 40th percentile below rather than adding tier 1 plus? Would that just make 40th
there were
and
yeah.
below a tier 2?
I'm not for sure if they're saying that would be, because really tier 2 is usually at 25th. And so I wouldn't want to be calling your students who are between 26th and 39 tier 1. But technically they really are. If you're looking at if you're looking at MTSS model, they are a tier 1 student. And that's why I wouldn't want to call them a tier 2 student, is what I'm saying, because they're technically not. If you were looking at an MTSS model, those students would not be tier 2 students. They are tier 1, they just need a little differentiation. So that's why we call them the tier 1 plus. I mean, I guess I don't know where you're, yeah. Yes, tier 1 starts at tier 1's 40th and up, but so those students who are between, that's why we use tier 1 plus. So because tier 2 really doesn't start to 25th. So we consider tier 1 at 40th, but if you're looking at MTSS model, it really would be at 26. Kylie, do you have anything to add to that? I know that's a little confusion. That's actually why we use tier 1 plus, because Strong Readers has a little bit different requirement than usual MTSS systems. Holly, do you have any clarification to add with that?
I would just say if you don't want to call from 40th to 26th, if you don't want to call it a tier 1 plus, you would need to call it a tier 2. And so that would mean you're giving them extra time outside of the block. If you want to give them extra time during their block, extra focus during their block, that would be that tier 1 plus. You can always pull additional students. But when you call them tier 2 from really 40th or 39th down to like 11th, is that, I mean, you're making kind of a commitment to pull them. So you can always do more. If you don't want to add the 1 plus, you can always do more, but they are not yet proficient. So they do need support in some way.
Okay, I do have one other thing to share. Let me go back to sharing my screen. Share. I have some upcoming Amira trainings to share out with you. Go to this right here. And this is in the agenda, this link. So Amira will be providing some trainings. And September, they have these different dates, 4 dates in September. And then we also have these dates. This one is for educators. This one is for administrators. So we have 4 dates for each, and there are links here that you can click to register for them. So if you are needing any more training for Amira, you can get that link, and that is posted on our agenda. Okay. I think we've covered most things from the chat. If you had a question that we didn't get to, you can email us for more information. And that's all we have for you today. Kylie, you have anything to add? Okay. Thank you for being with us today, Kylie, and for sharing some information for us on progress monitoring. And everyone else, thank you for taking your time today to join us to get the information that's needed for you to serve your students. And as always, thank you for all that you do for readers across our state every day.